Welcome to the Hard Skills Show with me, Dr. Mira Broncu. Today, we have two guests with us, Dr. George Watts and Laurie Blazek, and we will be talking about how to identify and capitalize on your strengths to become a strategic leader. Great to have you on the show, George and Laurie.
Thank you so much. We do appreciate being here. We really do.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And Laurie, I just want to make sure, did I get your last name right? Is it Blazek? Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So as a reminder, on this show, we discuss how to develop the nuanced hard skills needed to drive significant systemic change to make a real impact through your leadership. Be ready, take notes. I always do. Reflect deeply and identify at least one small step to further develop your hard skills muscle from our talk today. Now, a little bit about our guest today. Dr. George Watts, along with Laurie Blazek, are the principals of TLT Coaching, a leadership training and development firm based in Chicago. Their clients are global professional service firms, and they coach at the C-suite and executive level. George was a CEO of a publicly traded company before that, and he holds a doctoral degree in counseling psychology. And Laurie was a managing director in several global banking roles and holds an MBA in finance. And they have a book out, Becoming a Strategic Leader, Capitalize on the Power of Your Personality. And it offers practical guidance on how to use your strengths to add strategic value. So this is going to be really interesting and very perfect for our season right now that we're focusing on, because we're focusing on leading with strategy, right? Having a strategic plan. We're going to start with a fun, random question for you two. What was your first job or set of jobs, if you remember?
George, you want to go first?
Why don't you go first? You're CEO.
I was a shampoo girl in a beauty shop. And what I learned from that job was how to expertly parallel park, because it was on a very busy street. And now I can pull into a parking space in about 5 seconds flat. So
beautiful.
And I learned how to count quarters, because those were my tips. So the beginning of my banking career.
Awesome. Awesome. How about you, George?
I started out at a park service. I cut lawns and chopped trees down, and then I began to formulate my plan to go to college. I said, this is probably not a good way to spend the rest of my life, but it was a good job and it got me in shape to play sports. So it was fun in its own way.
Nice. That sounds pretty fun. I'm trying to remember my first job. It was either at the Children's Place, a children's clothing store, or Walmart or Taco Bell. All of them happened around the same time. I can't remember, but it was one of those service industries,
Well, you get a good look at humanity. Through the service
yes.
industry. You have a pretty good idea of what humanity.
I learned a lot about customer service.
You betcha you do.
Yes.
You do.
All right. Well, George, you started out as a counseling psychologist, and you were also CEO of a publicly traded company. And Laurie, you were managing director in several global banking roles. Did any of those professional roles and experiences start causing you to already think, even at that time, about your strengths as a leader and how to sort of capitalize on that and how to think about those things?
Well, I could start out and say that I think the journey that I'm on now was a direct result of having so little guidance throughout my banking career, and reaching a level where I was just, responsible for figuring out on my own. I never really had access to world-class leadership development. And so I was fortunate enough to, work my way into a position now, in hindsight, was really perfect for my strengths. But, I never had the mentorship or the guidance or the real deep understanding of my specific strengths that we help people gain with our program. And, looking back on that, I mean, that is in fact, the reason that I'm so passionate about what we're doing now, because we're really helping people collapse time.
Mhm.
We're helping them grow as much in 4 to 5 months as they would in 10 years. And that's really part of the mission of our company.
That is very valuable. What were the strengths, out of curiosity, that you learned you had as you were going through and sort of finding yourself in these leadership roles?
Well, I was almost always in high-level business development, so I was extremely good at partnering with clients, strong listening skills, so being able to extract information from clients that others perhaps could not, to help them grow their businesses. And I was also pretty socially bold, so I was good in a business development role. But I never really acknowledged my strengths. And I never really thought that they were anything special. I just figured everyone could do that. And that's another thing that I think is so critical in what we do, is help people understand just because it comes easy and naturally to you doesn't mean that it's not valuable.
Definitely. How about you, George?
Well, I started out in counseling psychology, but I never was a counseling psychologist, not really. When I was finishing my doctoral internship, IO psychology, this was in the kind of the late 80s, was really beginning to come into its own. And I was sitting at lunch and another psychologist said, you know, George, you know where the big money is? The money that we can only dream about is in IO psychology. And I said, yeah. And then we talked about executive assessment. And so I had a very deep training in assessment work. And so I took that assessment skill, and instead of applying it from a B to C perspective, I went into a B to B perspective, which is, I still maintain, was the single greatest decision of my life from a career perspective. So I took skills into the setting and found a new ecosystem for those skills. In terms of my strengths, I didn't really understand strength psychology back then. I don't think people really did. And so if we look at strength psychology, it's found its way into the literature, and it's progressed and transformed into positive psychology and those kinds of things. But what we try to do is, how does your strengths add strategic value? And when I finally figured this out is when my career really kind of took off, so to speak, when I really applied my strengths in a direct way that would have a lot of positive things happen. I'm open-minded, and so I understood creative business models. And I have enough extroversion to be effective in sales. I don't have the extroversion that Laurie does, but for a behavioral scientist, I'm quite extroverted. So it depends on who you want to. So the fusion of those qualities of extroversion and an open-mindedness makes me a good business strategist. But I'm very poor at execution. So I have to have people around me that actually know how to get something done.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but once you understand your strengths and realize how you can apply it, that's when the real differentiation and the uniqueness of what you bring to the table, that's when it really manifests.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of points that you two made that I resonated with. Number one, George, when you were saying I was never really a counseling psychologist, I feel like I was never a clinical psychologist. I was, I say to people, I was a clinical psychologist for 5 seconds before I went into management and leadership. And it was probably because of those strengths that I didn't know I had. And Laurie, it was related to that issue that I found myself in roles without really understanding why. And I just happened to have, fortunate enough to have a mentor who saw things in me I did not see in myself, who helped accelerate that process. But very few people have those kind of mentors in their lives that could identify very specifically how you meet a very strategic purpose for the organization and how it matches. And so the work that you're doing, I think, is really important because it does accelerate your ability to understand how to sort of match your abilities and then also complement them in ideal ways, right? So I do have a follow-up question, though, George, I think is very interesting, and I'm not sure a lot of people can tease this apart. How do you see the difference between strengths and skills? You made a distinction between them.
Strengths are an innate part of your being. Genetically, they are an innate part of your highest self. Skills, I can learn skills. Now, if you have an innate strength underneath the skill, for example, if you have a highly conscientious personality structure, you're going to be better at process and organizational dynamics. Now, I can learn those, but I'll never be as good as you. In other words, I can learn a skill, but when magic happens, it's when the strength and the skill are combined, that the strength leads to, when that happens, you instantly become what we call world class. And if you can understand who you are when you're at your best and understand the strength that drives that and find the right ecosystem, that's when the magic happens and they transcend in their career and they are at a much higher level than they ever dreamed possible. And that's what we try and do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's really interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think, that's true. When you're honing your strengths and developing them as high level skills, it is a powerful combination. I'm wondering if you have any examples of like clients that you recall who sort of, you were able to see how they extracted this combination of strengths and skills to kind of create this powerful world-class impact.
Well,
I'll give you one example, and you want to start?
Yeah, no, go ahead, and I'll piggyback off your.
Here's how I began the whole conceptual understanding of adding strategic value. I was in a global law firm, and I sat down with the chairman of the firm, and I asked him, I said, how come those lawyers down the hall are making $1 million a year, and you're making $6 million a year? They all went to top universities. They all had 15, 20 years of experience. I said, what's the difference? He said, those lawyers are outstanding lawyers, but I know how to add strategic value. And then it hit me that people can have the same education and perform the same job function, but what is the magic you bring to that job? In other words, I used to assess CEO candidates and senior executives. I'd get an assignment. There'd be 3 people I'm going to interview for a chief financial officer role for a global 1,000 company, a Fortune 1,000 company. All 3 of them were outstanding. They all could do the job extremely well. The question was, what strategic value could they add to the role beyond just competent skill level? And that gets into strengths, and that gets into manifesting those strengths. And that's how you become individualized and unique in your career.
Great, great. Let's come back after the ad break to keep focusing on this. And Laurie, you had another sort of additional story about combining innate strengths and skills. And I'm curious how that leads to strategic value. So we are reaching an ad break. You're listening to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mara Brancu, and our guests, Dr. George Watts and Laurie Blazek. We air on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern. If you'd like to join our online audience and ask questions right now that we can answer in real time, you are welcome to. You can find us on LinkedIn or YouTube at talkradio.nyc, and we'll be right back with our guests in just a moment.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mara Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Welcome back to the Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guests, Dr. George Watts and Laurie Blazek. So we were starting to get into this sort of interesting intersection of innate strengths and the skills that we learn and how that sort of develops into strategic value. Laurie, you were going to start to share a little about your own story behind that.
I don't have a specific individual I'm thinking about when I tell the story, but I wanted to talk a little bit about our process and how we help people understand their strengths and get very granular and accurate and think accurately about who they are when they're at their best. And we go through a fairly lengthy process of helping people really understand what are you doing when you're in a zone state. You know, what we're asking questions like, what were you naturally good at as a child? You know, how what are you doing in your role that you do for free? Because it just feels so natural and so organic to you. And what we do, I work with our clients to develop a personal branding statement, which we always target to try to be 7 words or less, but sometimes, you know, it drifts a little bit from our goal. But the most important part of that personal branding statement is that it is the absolute essence of who you are and how you add strategic value. And what it does is it provides an anchor for people. You know, you can look at your branding statement, you can look at your role, and you know, calculate how much of my day am I using my brand? You know, how can I delegate so that I can do more of what I do best? So it's that combination of the strengths and the platform. You know, how do I put myself in the optimal position to be successful? And you do have to go through a process of, you know, most of the people that we work with are very high functioning. They're very strong individuals, and they can do a lot of things well, but that's not the point. The point is, you know, where are you world class? And so through this branding process, we really do help people get accurate and granular about, you know, how they're unique, how they uniquely add strategic value. And it does bring, you know, confidence to the table to help them begin to take action to move their career forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, as you're talking, I'm thinking about this person that is in my leadership academy. And, you know, she astutely said she looked back at her sort of like early high school aptitude test where they ask, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And she said it was a very strange combination of things. She said something like a chef, a social worker, and a firefighter, or some strange combination, right? And she's like, but looking back, I've somehow pulled out a lot of those interests, and it's come full circle, and it's kind of strange. Now, most people don't realize that until like 20, 30 years into their career, and it's like, you know, 2020 hindsight. And what I'm hearing you say is, if you could pull this out, you know, in a much more proactive, thoughtful way, you could start being a lot more intentional and thoughtful about where you put your time and your energy. And there's something that you mentioned around also optimizing your time and your focus when you're able to do that, right?
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what we do. And having that focus, it's an aha moment for people. It completely changed. George always says, and you can jump in, George, once you know this, you can't unknow it. Okay. Once you've gone through this process and really deeply understood yourself and how what your success platform should look like, you can't go back. So part of that the last part of that process is then taking what you've learned about yourself and making sure that you do something about it. That you do have a plan. You do, even if it's small steps, as you said earlier, take notes, take a small step. How do you move yourself closer to the optimal position so that you're showcasing your strengths?
And I'll just simply add, the person in your leadership academy, the chef, the social worker, the firefighter, what she's essentially saying is, I like to be in the moment serving humanity. So she is very good being totally in the present.
Nice.
And she loves to serve humanity. So the fusion of her values of serving humanity and her ability to be perfectly in the moment with clients. And as you know, that promotes authenticity, it promotes honesty, and it promotes trust. So her skills, at first blush anyway, is being perfectly in the moment, wanting to serve humanity.
Mm.
Okay. And that can be very, very useful in certain dynamics where being in the moment is very important to hold deep conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. I bet it's very powerful when people share these kind of stories or experiences, what they enjoy, and then you sort of reflect back to them with such a sort of clear, concise way of thinking. I mean, personal brand, messaging, because you can take that away and then you can sort of keep it as a mantra as you're walking around and making decisions, right?
Right. And one of the things that I'm sure anyone who's worked in the corporate world is, you get a performance review and they list 9 things you do well and the one thing you don't do well, and then you dwell on that and it lives in your head, for the next year. And I think, because I never had anyone go through that process with me and say, all right, here are the 3 things that you are great at, Laurie, and we are going to help you find that perfect platform to manifest those strengths. Okay, so you have to do this on your own. You've got, yeah, you can have mentors and there will be some people around you that will guide you, but it's really up to you to, go through this process yourself and take control of your own future.
I'll just simply add, Laurie said it first, one of the things that coaching does is collapse time. So we want people to mature in 4 months as they would have in 10 years. And that's through accurate self-knowledge. And if you give people an accurate feedback, if you hear them and then distill it and give it back in a very accurate way that's very conceptually at high level, but it resonates beautifully with them, in that moment, in that instant, that's where that growth occurs. And the minute or the second that the person hears that higher order thought process, they reflect on it. And that's when growth happens in a second. So we don't think growth takes years and years. It really doesn't. What it does take is high level truth when the person is ready to accept it. And when that happens, that's when real professional growth occurs.
Right.
Yeah. And I do think, though, also, it takes a very astute coach to be able to pull that out and perceive it. And, I've had those experiences as well. And it can be really remarkable. I mean, I think, imagine how it feels to be somebody who is finally seen for their full strength in who they are, and it's being reflected by somebody outside of themselves who sees that. I mean, that can be transformative, right?
And we see the client holistically more than they see themselves. we see the client where they could go and where they could take their strengths. So in essence, we see the client in a pure, more evolved form than they can see themselves. But once they see that vision that we already have for them, and our job as coaches is to show them the vision that's already theirs. We don't really do anything. We just show them who they already are when they're at their best. And then that's the transformative state. And that's why people move so quickly and mature so quickly in the program. And all we do is hold a mirror out and show them who they are. And so we do see them differently than they see themselves. Eventually, they see themselves as we see them. And then that's when they graduate and they go on and do bigger and better things.
Yeah, that reminds me of the post that we wrote some time ago on LinkedIn. We had seen some Michelangelo sculptures that were half finished. And, he always talked about knowing what was embedded in the marble before he even started. And it was his job just to chip away at it until it became full form. And that is, in essence, what we do. We help you see what you could have seen all along. That was always there, just hadn't been revealed to you.
Absolutely. We do have a Facebook comment by Ramina Khatun. He is enjoying it. She said, nice. She's enjoying the conversation. So hi, Ramina. Thank you for being with us. Let me just sort of like tease apart even more strategic value. We've been using that term a little bit. And my understanding, the way that you're describing it, is that if you could really understand deeply what you're bringing to the table, right, fully, and your sort of best self, then that helps you start making some decisions about what to delegate, how to spend your time, how to make informed decisions, where to not spend your time, where to let other people spend their time. And to me, it's almost like, you're paying closer attention to where your feet are going and you're walking in the same direction. You're going in the same direction as where your feet are going. Instead of walking in circles constantly all over the place, touching this, which is like a lot of cognitive overload. Is that what you mean by adding strategic value, or is there more to it that I'm not thinking about?
We look at it in terms of outcomes. How is the outcome unique and different because you're in the room? How is the outcome expanded, grown? How is the outcome more visionary? How is the outcome different? Because like I said earlier, you can have people with the same skill set and they'll arrive at basically the same answer in a certain sense. But the question is, how do you change the outcome because of adding your special magic? And that's where you become world-class. There's where you greatly accelerate your career and pull away from the pack, so to speak. Because when you truly know how to add strategic value, the outcome is literally changed because you're in the room. You do that a few times, people are going to want you at the table. People are going to demand you're at the table. People will pay top dollar to get you at the table because they know the outcome is going to be a lot better or different or unique because you're there. That's when you know you have a lot of stickiness with clients. That's when you become partners with clients. And that's when they're willing to pay top dollar because they realize that you can bring a unique answer. And that's what we mean by adding strategic value.
Yeah, but you're only going to do that through your natural strengths.
You can only do that through your strengths.
Right.
You'll never be world-class overcoming your weaknesses. You'll only be world-class by accelerating and deepening and augmenting your strengths.
So when we come back from the ad break, I really want to hear a little bit more about this because it sounds like it's not just an efficiency of resources. There's an outcome, there's the results, there's an amplification of what could be. And I'd love to hear some stories of leaders who maybe were not able to do this, who didn't do this well, and what were the outcomes, and contrasting it with stories who leaders who were able to hone this, what the difference is, what it made. So just a reminder, you're listening to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guests, Laurie Blazek and George Watts, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Were you an essential worker during the pandemic? If you needed to learn stages of epilepsy, did you depend on advocates? Did you use new innovations to cope with mental and neurological issues? Maintaining high quality of life and keeping good mental health are what we all strive for. I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each week top healthcare influencers, professionals, and innovators answer these questions and more. Stay tuned on Thursdays at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will continue to be frank about health with all of you.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to the Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Branco, and our guests today, George Watts and Laurie Blazek. By the way, if you're watching this live or if you're going to watch this as a recording on video, you'll probably see some weird shadows here. That's because I'm in a hotel room today and the lighting is all weird and stuff. So that's why. Okay. So, coming back to kind of where we left off, trying to understand the potential here. The strategic value is the potential increased results, outcomes that could happen as a result of really understanding and leaning fully into your greatest strengths. And I'd love to hear some stories about leaders who may not have done this well and kind of what that leads to in terms of their strategic value or not so much, those outcomes versus leaders who can do this really well. What do you see as the differences? What have you noticed?
It's important to understand, and this is where we differentiate ourselves somewhat, Mira. Every strength has a shadow. And the shadow is the immature unconscious projection. And for example, it's the extrovert who can't shut up. It's the open-minded who can't ever get anything done because it's the conscientious and it's so rigid that they become difficult. And so one of the things you have to do to be an effective leader is to work through your shadow. And leaders fail because of two reasons. Number one, their shadow is too strong for the ecosystem and it derails them. The second is they rely too much on their strength and they hire in their own image. And we cover this very effectively, I think, in becoming a strategic leader. We have a model that shows how each personality type adds strategic value. So you have to look at business, and that's our frame of reference is business. As a transaction, you have to innovate, sell, partner, deliver, and assess. And so you have to do all of those. And if they all don't get done, that business will fail at some point. Now, you can be a leader, let's say you can be EVP of sales and be a strong extrovert and just come at it from that perspective. Now, you're not a CEO. You're a leader, and you can rely on that extroversion. But oftentimes, leaders who rely so much on their extroversion fail because a lot of being EVP of sales is not selling, but it's in coaching. And so you've got to look at the shadow to the strength, and you also have to look at overcoming your number 4 and 5 traits, your shadows and your weaker areas, and hire the right people around you. If you don't hire the right people around you as CEO, you're going to fail. If you don't control your shadows to your strength, you're going to fail. Laurie, any other thoughts?
Well, I'll just give you another example of that. We work with a lot of people who are highly, highly conscientious. They can be paralyzed because they have the shadow of perfectionism or rigidity of their thinking. And, people intuitively know this about themselves, but we go through this process of having them identify what their shadows are. And we diffuse that defensiveness that people have about their shadows, because we all have them. Even the agreeable personality type like me, my dominant trait is agreeable. We can't say no. We always subordinate our own interests for the interests of everyone else because we want everyone to like us. Okay, well, that's a wonderful attribute to have, but it doesn't always serve you well in business. And so, we create this safe space for people to, really look objectively at themselves and their own shadows, and work toward lightening them. We don't ask people to change. This program that we roll out to executives. This is not about changing who you are. This is about growing and maturing and lightening the shadow and focusing on the strengths. So I don't know if that's specific enough to answer the question, but we work with shadow behavior a lot.
Yeah. What about leaders who come to you over concerned with their shadow side? In fact, it's sort of getting in their way. They're so worried about not being good at this and not being good at that, and finding themselves, sometimes we call that imposter syndrome. Sometimes, it's more about stress and anxiety getting in the way of being able to lean into your best self and things like that. What do you do in those kind of cases?
Find out where the guilt is.
Or the fear. Guilt
or the fear. And again, there's some guilt driving that fear. What are you afraid of? And once you've overcome fear, life becomes fairly easy. And once you overcome fear, you're able to speak more authentically. So a lot of our work, I think at some level, helps people understand that they don't have to be afraid. That they're in our coaching dynamic, they get pretty quickly, there's no judgment. And once there's no judgment and people are not afraid of being judged, then they become more open. And once that authentic dialogue happens, as you know, in counseling, the one thing that I remember about counseling, I don't remember much, but one thing I do remember, that if you hold deep, authentic, real conversations, you become more mentally healthy. So that's part of what we do, is allow the person to hold those deep conversations. And a lot of coaching is holding deep conversations. But if they can learn to hold deep conversations with us without fear, then they can learn to hold it with their subordinates, learn to hold it with their team members. And that's where they begin to really become a leader, because people want them in the room because of their emotional maturity. And people are attracted psychodynamically to maturity. And it's the ability to listen, it's the ability to not judge, and it's the ability to hold deep conversations.
Yeah, and I'll just add that, we really do help people think accurately. So, for example, the imposter syndrome, you're thinking that you're not worthy or not good enough, could be rooted in something in your past that is completely inconsequential to who you are, the here and now, what your future looks like. And we help people dissect some of those things that are holding them back, in, again, a non-judgmental way, because the past is really an illusion. It's only the story you tell yourself. So if you're you're dwelling on something that happened 10 years ago that really doesn't have any relevance to who you are and what you're doing today. We help to shine a light on it and try to move past those things. That's part of that psychological maturity that George was talking about. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And, so now I'm wondering, are there times when you realize that it's really the environment that is creating that experience? And I'll give you an example, because I work with a lot of women and a lot of, especially women who have additional marginalized identities and have been minoritized. And so a lot of their experiences are accurately portraying a sort of understandable protectiveness against the environment that has made them feel so invalidated for their strengths, or they're not being seen fully for their strengths. And a lot of questions for me come up around, is this the right environment, or are there other opportunities to try something different, a different role? Are there things we haven't tried yet in this environment that could, if with some adjustment, really lead to some amazing outcomes? And so there's a lot of sort of questioning around person-environment fit, and what's causing what. And I'm wondering, are there times when you're thinking, this person has incredible strengths that are not being seen in this environment, and in this case, we need to be thinking about a different strategy for them to show their greatest strengths?
This week, I was talking to a high-level woman executive from a professional services company, and she's managing one large account, a couple $100 million account. And I'm going to be perfectly blunt. It's a good old boy account, okay? And she's frustrated because she's marginalized in a sense. And I asked her, I said, sometimes your ecosystem just doesn't recognize how valuable you really are. And at the end of the day, sometimes it's just easier to just change your ecosystem and just say, something, this isn't worth it.
It's just not a good fit.
It's not a good fit in the sense. Now, we could certainly coach her to be more mature. We could certainly coach her to not personalize people's reaction. We could coach her to alter her behavior maybe a little bit. But why? This woman is extremely valuable, okay? And she needs to be on another couple $100 million account that really understand how much she brings to the table. So sometimes we can get frustrated with where we're at and who we report to and the dynamics that we have to contend with every day. Now there's a certain kind of stress level that happens in every role that you're not going to be 100%. But at some point in time, it's okay to say, something, this isn't working for me and it ain't me. Okay. And it's okay. It's okay. Know your strengths, know the value you bring, find the right ecosystem. That's all. So it's not like hugely complicated, like, gosh darn, this is so complicated, nobody can understand it. No, it's actually quite simple. What is your strength? What's the right ecosystem? And how do you apply your strength to change outcomes? If you really understand that, and use that to guide your career, you're going to come out way ahead in life. I know I have. From starting as a counseling psychologist, I can honestly say I've enjoyed my career quite a bit more than I would have. And I really wasn't that good at it. I don't have the agreeableness. I don't have the sensitivity I think some people do. But in business, I found that my personality works fairly well. Laurie, any thoughts?
I love everything that you just said.
Okay.
That was great. I mean, I think it really does come down to how powerful the decisions you can make when you really understand fully what you bring to the table, your full strengths, and how that can impact an organization, or how you can take it away from an organization that isn't valuing it, right?
It changes the power dynamic.
Yes.
When you and when you have confidence in who you are when you're at your best.
Right.
And you can look dispassionately at your role and say, I'm in a role that's using my strengths 20% of the time. And I'm not in a position to be able to change that. Can you increase that number to 40% or 60%? The higher up you are in the food chain, the more, probability you have of tailoring your job to match your strengths. But especially lower level positions, it's very difficult to do that. But yet you need to go through that process.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you're feeling under stress and you're tired and you're exhausted, and you're not enjoying your work, you're probably using your bottom ranked traits, or not tapping into your strengths as much as you should have.
That's a really good point. We're going to come back after the ad break to put another little fine line on that one. And when we come back from the ad break, we're also going to pull together what is our bottom line takeaway message here for folks. So we'll be right back after these messages with our guests, Laurie Blazek and George Watts. Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guests, Laurie Blazek and Dr. George Watts. So to pull it all together and also highlight kind of knowing that when we are not our best selves, it's under stress, it's under, kind of high degree of stress, and we don't necessarily realize that we can't bring our, best selves to it. What are the things that you want people to know, to take away from today, as like the first steps that they can take to engage in this kind of work?
George, you want to start? I mean, I'm just going to start with guided introspection, and we are big believers in that. Our book takes you through that journey. It's one of the big reasons that we wrote it, because we wanted this material to be accessible to everyone. It's written in a way that's easy to digest and put into practice. So I think that guided introspection, it's never too late for that. And the insights that you gain through that are valuable no matter what they are, whether it's identifying your shadows and working to lighten them, or just being more conscious of your strengths, or, being more confident in who you are when you're at your best.
And I am going to just share my screen if you're watching live or you're watching the recorded video later. The book that Laurie referenced, is Becoming a Strategic Leader. Capitalize on the power of your personality. And you could find it at becomingstrategic.com, at Amazon, at your favorite bookstore. And there's more information on that website if you want to find out a little bit more. George, you're on mute, but is there anything that you'd like to add as a takeaway?
Yeah, just very quickly, and I'm going to give a shout out to the American Psychological Association. They published our book. Rose Sokol and the publishers there are first class, and they just did a magnificent job. So they're a great partner, and I appreciate the APA publishing our book very much. But I'd like to leave your listeners just with a thought, and that is, manifest your full potential in life. Don't allow fear to subtract what you could become. And so often we allow fear to negate our aspirations. Who are you when you're at your best? Now what potential? Dream for a moment your potential, and don't allow fear to hold you back, because fear is the illusion of the ego. And don't allow illusion to hold you back from your potential. Don't allow illusion and fear to hold you back from earning the kind of money and having the status and the position that you really deserve in life. Look at your shadows and realize that they're just a natural part of the personality structure, and say, I'm going to lighten those shadows. I'm going to enlighten myself and mature and manifest my potential by leveraging my strengths to add strategic value. It's not that complicated a road. It really is not. And the dividends are enormous. So that's the core message I'd like to leave today.
Love it. And don't you, if you're listening right now, don't you want to just lean in? He's so inspirational. He just inspires you to be your very best. Thanks, George. And where can people find you if they want to learn more about your work?
I'll let Laurie handle that. She's the CEO and our chief salesperson.
Well, with our new book, we are completely reworking our website. The new website should be up by the end of the week, but it's tltcoaching.com. And basically, it's just a very simple site explaining it. Yeah, that's our old site. That's our old logo. But it's basically, here's who we are. These are the things we believe in, and our main message is don't change, grow. Okay. Become more of who you are when you're at your best. And we really do not believe in change. We believe in personal and professional growth through better understanding your strengths and thinking accurately, about who you are. So the website is out there. The work that we do is really for it's B2B. So we do a lot of work with corporations and their executives, but the book is our message to everyone out there who would like to piggyback on what we're selling at large companies, and it will give you an experience that we hope is, at least 80% of what our individual coaching will provide. It took us about 10 years to write this book.
That's incredible. Who is a perfect person to pick up this book?
I would say people that aspire, and if you're in business and you aspire to be more than you are now. So the main criteria is, what do you aspire to? If you want to be inspired and you want to aspire, I think our book is very appropriate for you. Certainly, if you're a manager and you want to move from a manager mentality to a leadership mentality, our book is for you. And I also want to say our program introduces our IP, which we call scalable intimacy. So we have 20 hours of online that is very, very scalable. And that includes the book, the audiobook, videos, a fantastic career journal. So we take you through a process, and that's scalable. But then we have the intimacy of the one-on-one and the assessment and the feedback, which really causes the aha reaction. So our business model is scalable intimacy. And again, that's how we've manifested our potential. So the first people we applied this to is ourselves. So we wanted to grow. We wanted to become world-class. We wanted to individuate ourselves. So we tested this on ourselves first. And fortunately, we have many leaders around the world that buy into our system and our theory and our models, and business is quite robust. So we don't do any business to consumer. We're sorry, but we can't handle that. We only work with big business and large professional organizations.
That's
now.
Perfect. So find them at tltcoaching.com. If you'd like to explore how TowerScope, me and my company, can help you with leadership and team development services, you can also check us out at gotowerscope.com. So audience, what did you take away? And more importantly, what is one small change you can implement this week based on what you learned from George and Laurie? Share it with us on LinkedIn at Mira Brancu and at talkradio.nyc or Laurie Blazek or George Watts. Share it with us on LinkedIn so we can cheer you on. Talk Radio NYC is also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, all over the place. But LinkedIn is where we live online. So that's where I'm going to respond. In addition to being a live show, we're also a podcast on iTunes and Spotify. Please go subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, share it with others to help increase our visibility, reach, and impact. Thank you to talkradio.nyc for hosting. I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, the host of the Hard Skills Show. And thank you for joining us today, George and Laurie. We had a great time together, and enjoy the rest of your day wherever you're tuning in from, everybody. Bye, everyone.